All right, thank you all for being here in person or on the Zoom. And thank you in particular to our esteemed guests, Heather Mizeur, Dave Harden, and I also want to acknowledge our other esteemed guest, yes, William Malish. And he will be speaking, he's not running for District 1, so he will be speaking after we have the forum for the two candidates for District 1. So yeah, so just I'm delighted to have you all here, and I will just turn it over to our esteemed moderator, Phyllis Kilby. Yeah, you know, names are not my, like, it takes me a second.
Okay.
And she's going to explain the format and go from there.
Okay. Hi, I'm Phyllis Kilby, a retired dairy farmer. So I brought my cowbell with me just in case I need to use it at some point. So let's start with your rules of the road. Each candidate will get 2 minutes for an introduction. Candidates will get 2 minutes to answer each question. The questioner will read the question one time, but will repeat it if necessary for the second candidate to answer. We will alternate who answers first. Sean, who is in a box somewhere, is our timer. Please keep to your time limits. Sean also has a mute button that he can use. And if that fails, I have a cowbell. I guarantee that nobody is going to hear anything over the cowbell. Sean will give you a 1-minute warning. The other thing that I wanted to say is, this is sort of a personal thing for me. Please answer the question. We would appreciate it if you did not pivot to what you want to say instead of answering our questions. I'll call you on it. I'm really very good at that. Ask my husband. This is a content-driven forum. We would like to assess how you approach very real problems. Remember, we're not in love with the problem. We would like to hear what your solutions are to it. Unlike a lot of political discussions lately, good manners here are important. The questions that we'll be asking tonight come from Dem Club members and represent the topics that are important to us. So we'll get started. Enough rules. We're going to start with introductions, and Mr. Harden, you're first.
Great. Well, Phyllis, thank you. And this is not the first event where we had a cowbell. I did that in Jarrettsville, and the moderator had a cowbell, and it was great because I was also speaking right after or right before Dan Cox, and he got the cowbell quite a few times. But look, we're facing a perfect storm. I think everybody knows it. We have a out of control Supreme Court. We have an economy that is not working for folks, and we have real risks to our economy. I mean, to our democracy. Andy Harris is a massive problem. On November 9th, we don't want to wake up with him getting another 2 years, Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, the head of the House, and Donald Trump announcing his presidency. What we need to do is hold Andy Harris accountable, and that means very specifically beating him. And that means we need to take 35,000 votes away from Andy Harris and put it in the Democratic column. I'm the candidate who can do that. I would love to earn your support. This is going to be a tough summer and early fall. So thank you. Thank you, Phyllis. And to the Cecil Dems, thank you for having us.
Thank you. Okay, we'll switch over to Ms. Mizeur.
Thank you so much to the Cecil County Democrats for hosting us tonight, and for moderating and keeping us on track with your bell. I love it. I'm Heather Mizeur, and I have experience at the national, state, and local level as a skilled legislator who knows how to get things done. I have a reputation as a pragmatic consensus builder. I know how to turn ideas into laws, plans into action. And in the 8 years that I was in the state legislature, I passed laws to expand health insurance for children, families, and reproductive health for women. I protected our environment from the dangers of fracking. And I worked to come up with solutions to support middle-class families and small businesses that were struggling during the economy while I was in the legislature. When I retired from elective office, I moved to my family farm in Kent County, where when I wasn't working on the land, I was running a nonprofit organization dedicated to bridging the growing divisions that exist in politics. And it was that then on January 6th, when the events of January 6th happened, that there was a violent insurrection against our Capitol building, that I felt called to return to this arena. And as we're seeing in the January 6th hearings, we need to have a legislator who is going to stand up for what is right. I am running for Congress to be your fierce advocate, who will wake up every day looking for new ways to connect with our communities, to show up, to listen, and to put good solutions on the table to fix some of our toughest challenges. I hope over the course of our forum tonight that I have an opportunity to earn your vote. I am the woman who will defeat Andy Harris in November.
Okay, we're going to move on to question number 1. And Myra is going to give us this question. And I would ask you to listen carefully because Myra put her heart into this question and it's long. So, Ms. Mizeur, you're on first.
First, it's a statement and then a question. So listen to the statement and then listen to the question. My question is on immigration. Cecil County, like the rest of Maryland and the United States, has a hidden undocumented immigrant population, not just from Mexico, Central and South America, but also from other countries, including Asian and African countries. Many of these undocumented immigrants work in agriculture, farming, horse stables, restaurants, hotels, landscaping, maintenance, construction, cleaning homes, and just about anywhere they can get a job with no permanent residency, also known as a green card. Cecil County also has a population of undocumented youth, some that were protected under the DACA program, or the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. Although many lost it when the former administration canceled the program, and now many are as unprotected as their parents and other relatives. Some of these youth benefit from a program called the Maryland Dream Act, where they can attend a community college and be considered for in-state and in-county tuition under certain criteria. The question is, what is your plan to assist undocumented immigrants in their fight for immigration reform, driver licenses for undocumented immigrants, educational opportunities past high school, and to reinstate a path to citizenship for the thousands of unprotected dreamers in Maryland?
Thank you so much for the question, Myra. It's really important for us to remember that all people are children of the same creator. And I think our immigration policies need to be infused with dignity, respect, and love for all people. I believe that we are a nation of immigrants, and our policies should be compassionate and respectful of human rights. We absolutely have to find a pathway to citizenship. Oftentimes people are fleeing their countries because of violence, economic considerations, or political upheaval. Now, some of what we can do is try to help people who want to stay in their own countries by assisting those challenging areas with political persecution, violence, and economic concerns there. But we also need to have a pathway to citizenship for, as you mentioned, so many people that are coming here to work in important industries where we need their help. We are also a country of laws, and we have to secure our border. We can do both things. What has happened in the breakdown in Congress in addressing our immigration needs is part of polarization, where this issue has unnecessarily become steeped in political terms and partisanship bickering and ideological conversations that don't focus on where are the common connections on solving this problem that is necessary for both the people who are coming here and fleeing their countries, the people who are hiring them and need them to work. And specifically to some of the questions that you asked, when I was in the state legislature, I was part of the group of legislators that advanced and voted for the DREAM Act. I do believe at the federal level, we absolutely need to reestablish and strengthen the DACA provisions. People need to be able to have access to healthcare and be able to get driver's license. And I've always absolutely come on the side of supporting immigrants as people who need support from our laws.
Thank you.
As a side note, at about 30 seconds, I will put up a yellow sign here if both of our speakers can see me. And when your time's up, I'll put up our red sign.
Thank you,
You really
Sean.
want to hear the cowbell.
Okay, so we're going to move on to Mr. Harden. Same question.
Okay, so listen, I'm cognizant of the fact that I'm speaking to a Democratic club, but we're also in a very conservative district. So, if you want to govern, you got to win. So I'm going to tell it to you straight. I support comprehensive reform, but this is what comprehensive immigration reform means. First of all, there does need to be a pathway to citizenship for DACA and the Dreamers. 100%, I agree with that. They've added so much to our society and to our economy that I fully agree. But we also need to couple that with strengthened borders, particularly on the southern border, and for any immigrant or refugees that are coming in through other means besides the southern border. If you don't have border controls, you're not going to have a country, and so you need to have border controls. And this has got to be part of the package if you want comprehensive support. Third, I 100% support the refugee status, which is different than just straight immigration. But refugee status gives those that are fleeing persecution opportunity to settle in the United States. I sponsored Afghan refugees who work for me in Afghanistan, and they add a lot to our country. And you're going to see this with outpouring of Ukrainians. Lastly, I'd like to consider a system that Canada has, which is a merit-based as opposed to a lottery-based immigration system where you can pick and choose talent as well as just diversity of country. In terms of post-college, post-high school, no, I don't think that will fly in this district. I do think that those that aren't documented need to get driver's licenses and can go get vaccines and go to school. But in terms of government subsidized post-high school, college, university, I don't think that's a benefit that will fly in this district. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, our next question is on education, and it's from Eunice, who is up there in the corner. Hi, Eunice. First, we're going to go to Mr. Harden and then Ms. Mizeur. So let's hear the question, Eunice.
Thank you very much. Excluding academics.
We're getting a little feedback, sorry.
How's that?
Much better, thank you.
Okay. Excluding academics, what other resources do you believe schools and the community should provide to support students' well-being and their achievements?
Eunice, thank you for the question. I grew up in Carroll County. I went to public school. When I went to public school, we didn't have universal kindergarten. That's shocking to everybody, but we didn't have it. So I think we need to have universal pre-K. 100% agree with that. Secondly, we need a vocational school system at the high school that provides both training and learning and apprenticeship opportunities for those who aren't going to college. So that they can get real world experience and real world jobs that will be attuned to the 21st century. Thirdly, we need a community college system that really is a gateway for those who want to go to college but may not be able to afford the full cost. We have supported our community college extraordinarily deeply in my community and with my family. More broadly, and I'm trying to get the gist of what's beyond what you're asking, but look, we need schools to be essentially safe harbors for students, so that so the actual location has to be safe. It has to be inclusive. It has to be welcoming. I got a public school education that allowed me to compete at the highest levels in our nation. I'm not entirely sure that that's still the case, particularly in some of our more forgotten communities. So I think we need to have that. Of course, we need to have lunches for those who can't afford lunches. We need after school programming, we need sports, we need arts, we need communications. We need a robust public school system that not only works in America, but trains our kids so they compete against the best in the world, against China and Russia and Europe, and we need to be first in class. So thank you for your question, Eunice.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay, Ms. Mizeur?
Thank you also for the question, Eunice. Our schools are just experiencing so many challenges right now on the back end of a pandemic where everyone was really challenged with how to make sure that our kids keep up with learning needs, with at-home schooling and schools that are closed. We're still in this huge learning gap right now that we absolutely have to be able to step into sorry, there's feedback. Every time I speak, there's some loud noises coming from there. That if we don't understand the real challenge with the learning gap from the pandemic, we're going to have some kids that permanently are never going to be competitive, and stepping in at the federal level in our 21st Century Schools programs that will be reauthorized in the next year will be really important for us to focus on some of that. And it's not just a pandemic we're dealing with the epidemic of gun violence in our schools. The fact that children are doing active shooter drills on a regular basis, and that it's not just drills anymore, but that it is a situation that continues to repeat itself is just unconscionable. I've been having conversations with all of our schools in the first district, inquiring whether or not they think that the school resource officers in their schools are a program that is working for them, or whether or not there needs to be improvements to it. Are there enough resources for this? Is the focus of the work there getting beyond just protecting kids in the classroom? Because I'm seeing the yellow card go up, I had notes here about expanding and supporting more mental health services in our schools because of the trauma that kids have experienced, and social emotional learning that needs to be a part of the curricula. And I also had arts, band, sports, after school programs, universal pre-K, and workforce CTE programs in our schools as part of the workforce development training section of my economic plan. Would love to be able to go into more detail on all of these, but I'm really glad that you put such a vibrant question on the table for us to explore tonight.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to move on to question number 3, which is on gun control. Judy has that. So Ms. Mizeur, we'll go with you first, and then with Mr. Harden.
Thank you. Congress has finally passed some minor gun laws, but cannot pass stronger ones, even though the majority of Americans want them. What do you see as the root cause of this disconnect between lawmakers and the people? What is your approach to making US gun laws reflect the desires of its citizens?
Fantastic question. So on the Eastern Shore, gun ownership is a part of our identity. And having grown up in a rural community, and I live on a farm, I have guns, I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment. But I understand that with great rights come greater responsibility. And none of my neighbors would disagree with me that we're a part of the mega majority, as you refer to, that want something to be done. It is not okay that we can't go to 4th of July parades, or our children don't feel safe in our schools, or that we can't go to our grocery stores or churches without being fearing yet another mass casualty incident that is turning into nearly a daily affair in this country. It has to stop. Now, yes, we did have some progress recently, but it just is just starting to go where we need it to go. The NRA and the firearms industry owns too many members of Congress. They dictate what the positions are, which are not in alignment with the positions of the people. Andy Harris falls in that category. I sat down with him after the massacre in Las Vegas to do an hour-long podcast to try to find consensus on where we could move gun safety in a direction that would keep guns out of the hands of those that would harm us. He and I agreed on multiple points, but after 5 years, he did absolutely not one damn thing about it. And that's why I'm running against him, to hold him accountable and to put someone in this seat who understands what it means to negotiate meaningful legislation that will address our biggest problems without just being owned by corporate lobbies. I don't take corporate PAC money. I'm not supported by the NRA and those organizations. I will absolutely always have the voice of the people when this important topic is being explored.
Mr. Harden?
Thanks. I'm going to take 5 seconds and just say one other thing to Eunice. My mother was the 1994 Carroll County Teacher of the Year. She recently passed. If I don't have education at the top of my agenda, driving real results, she's going to come back and yell at me. So that's important. Look, gun control is the wrong term of art. So we got to begin with that. We got to talk about gun safety. Right. And the problem is when we say words like gun control, we've already lost the argument and we've already lost the messaging, because we don't say, religious freedom control, or we don't say free speech control or habeas corpus control. DC versus Heller, which gave us, which was the Supreme Court case that told us that individual ownership to guns is a constitutional right, also said that it is no greater or lesser of a constitutional right than any other constitutional right, and therefore it's subject to regulation. And I think we can begin with that. The interesting thing about the Supreme Court case that just came down, that struck down the New York law, and by the way, the Maryland law, is that this gives us more flexibility to put in regulations, because we've changed the permitting regime from a may carry to a shall carry, absent certain things. This, ironically and interestingly, gives us more opportunity to raise the age of certain weapons, to make sure that folks on the terror watch list don't get it, or red flag laws to make sure abusers and domestic partners or felons don't get guns. And so really what we need to do is consider this as an opportunity, almost a perfect opening to push through some more common sense regulations like we just got the other day. My 2 minutes are up, and I thank you for the question.
You got another 20 seconds, Dave. So
Yeah, okay, this is interesting because I'm hitting my button to make sure I'm not going over. But look, this is a divisive issue, and the question is can we find small steps that we can agree upon that will still allow us to win and govern and control the mass slayings that we're having every week? So I think the answer is yes.
Sorry about that, Phyllis. I hit the mute button for you.
Thank you, Sean. You just didn't want to hear the cowbell again. I know. Okay. On to question number 4. This one is on reproductive rights, and Mary Ann's going to give it to us. We're going to go to Mr. Harden first, and then Ms. Mizeur.
In light of recent Supreme Court rulings and the possibility of new issues to come before the court, what legislation are you ready to sponsor or support in order to protect personal freedoms such as reproductive rights, marriage equality, and access to contraception.
Okay, so you added in a lot of very deep questions that are all attached to that, and I'm going to work through it effectively. Number one, I'm pro-choice. Related to that, I would sponsor or support codification of Roe v. Wade. So I'm going to be very, very crystal clear about that. What you are actually, what you're asking in a deeper level is whether the right of privacy, which is an unenumerated right in the Constitution, is truly a right, a basic and fundamental right. And the problem with the Dobbs ruling is that really pulls at the right of privacy, and you're right, that brings out contraception, particularly in play, that brings out marriage equality, that brings out a lot of consensual adult actions. It brings out how you raise your children, including whether or not you give them instruction in English language or not. And so what I think that folks on both sides of the aisle don't understand, if there is a unraveling of the right of privacy, it will strike to the very foundational core of things that Democrats care about and things that Republicans care about. And so, you know, the Supreme Court is just simply can't go down that path of where they're going to unravel the right of privacy. If you know, I don't know how we codify that. I will say that we learned a lot through the 1960s and the civil rights legislation, which got us into a better place instead of having the Supreme Court. And so if we need a right of privacy as a codified legislative piece that protects some of these basic considerations, then that's something that's interesting that you've just raised. So to reiterate, pro-choice, obviously I don't want to turn back the clock on marriage equality or contraception, or who you can marry along racial lines, etc. I think my 2 minutes are up, if I'm tracking it correctly. Thank you for that really tough and interesting question.
Okay, Ms. Mizeur.
Thank you so much. What happened when the Supreme Court rolled back 50 years of established law of precedent in prohibiting women from being able to make our own decisions about our bodies and our autonomy is just beyond anything any of us ever expected. Maybe we should have expected it a little bit earlier and pushed for getting these rights in law and not left to court interpretation. Whether it is marriage equality, contraception, or a woman's right to choose, these should be laws spelled out at the federal government and no longer deferred to the courts. I am and always have been 100% pro-choice. I am backed by Emily's List and Progressive Planned Parenthood Action Fund in this race. I absolutely think we have to end the filibuster and codify Roe v. Wade in law with the Women's Health Protection Act right now. This is a big defining difference between me and Mr. Harden. We were at a forum this week where he said he does not support ending the filibuster to do this. This is not okay. We absolutely cannot go back to a place where women's lives are in danger getting back alley and coat hanger abortions because anti-choice zealots like Andy Harris don't even want to allow for exceptions in the case of a woman's life being in danger or rape or incest. He even wants to have a national abortion ban that would claw back the rights we still have in Maryland under the new decision, under the new Dobbs decision. This won't happen when you have Heather Mizeur as your congresswoman. At least where my vote will be, where my advocacy is, will 100% always be pushing in every way to make sure that a woman's right to choose is always protected. And obviously, I really want to protect my marriage too. So I'll be a fierce advocate for that as well. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Question number 5 is on agriculture and the environment. And Mr. Bill will do this question. We'll go to Ms. Mizeur first and then to Mr. Harden.
One of the major economic drivers of Cecil County and the first district is agriculture. While the health of the Chesapeake Bay is also a concern for residents, how do you plan to reconcile the two instead of pitting them against each other?
Oh, wow. I love this question because that's exactly what I have done in my campaign. One of the very first policy initiatives I worked on was bringing farmers and environmentalists and conservationists together to come up with an approach that we call the agroclimate solutions for Maryland's Eastern Shore, because it doesn't have to be a choice between the two. We stand on a giant carbon sink, the land. And if we were to invest more money at the federal level in creating a national soil health initiative that would pay farmers to do regenerative farming practices and sequester carbon in the ground instead of releasing it into the air, we would be legions ahead of where we are right now in addressing the climate crisis. The agroclimate plan also has provisions in there for incentivizing and lowering crop insurance rates for good environmental practices. And not unlike some of the work that you do at your farm, we would also invest in supporting anaerobic digesters and other kinds of cutting edge technologies on farms that can turn what would be otherwise be waste into renewable sources and other things that could be sold, like fertilizers and compost, in addition to the biomass that could be captured there. We need someone representing this district who's not a climate change denier. Andy Harris has a 3% lifetime score with the League of Conservation Voters. My score, 98% over the 8 years I was in the legislature. It's why I'm proud to be backed by the Sierra Club and the League of Conservation Voters in this election. I'm the environmentalist in this campaign, and I'm looking forward to bringing that renewed sense of connection to the land, the water, the air we breathe back into our representation here, because like Wayne Gilchrist before me, who I'm also proud to have backing me in this race, we see that our district has more impact from the rising sea levels and the saltwater intruding onto our agricultural lands and the coastal flooding that needs to be mitigated. Our district is impacted more than any other. And that's why it's incredibly important that we elect someone who has an environmentalist viewpoint that also is a farmer and can bring the sides together in order to create that collaborative approach. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Harden.
Thank you for that question. I grew up on a small farm. I still have a small farm. We care about these things. This is exactly who we are. But we've spent billions of dollars over the last 50 years trying to clean up the bay with not a lot of success. And part of the reason is the adversarial relationship that you just described. I ran billions of dollars and thousands of people across the world on the most complicated issues of our generation. And I will tell you this, if we do not include the local people into solutions on cleaning up the bay and driving an economic future that works for them, we will accomplish nothing. And right now, the environmental NGOs exclude and demonize the farmers and the watermen. And what this has resulted in is in the impasse in which we now find ourselves, where we can accomplish nothing because everybody is pointing fingers at each other. Meanwhile, most of the pollution that's coming into the bay is from metropolitan areas and the Pennsylvania farms, and it's coming through the Conowingo Dam. And so, you know, we use this to demonize the farmers and to demonize the watermen and to say that they're the ones that are the main causes of the pollution and that the watermen are overfishing. This is not at all the case. So if I get in, what I'm going to try to do is drive actual results, right? Where there's an agreement where the environmentalists come to the farmers and where the environmentalists come to the watermen and produce outcomes. The other thing I will just say in my last 20 seconds is that we have a great opportunity to sell high value product into the biggest markets on the face of the earth. Our farmers can do that. We need to be able to innovate and incubate so that they can sell into those markets. And selling on the commodities exchange in Chicago is an entirely different way of agriculture than what we've seen in terms of some of the innovations that have come out in the last 10 years. Happy to give more detail on that if you would like. By the way, since Heather invoked my name on the filibuster, I would like to get at least 15 seconds response at some point.
Okay. All right, we're going to move on to question number 6. This is on infrastructure. Donna's going to give us this question. We're going to go to Mr. Harden first and then to Ms. Mizeur.
We have several issues here in Cecil County where the federal government needs to help us. The Perry Point VA Medical Center in Perryville, the Bainbridge property in Port Deposit, and the sediment and debris at the Conowingo Dam coming from New York and Pennsylvania. With one question, I would like to ask, what role could Congress play in resolving the issue of the cleanup of the sediment and debris removal from the Conowingo Dam?
This is what I hear the most from local folks, farmers and watermen on the shore. It's the Conowingo Dam and the sediment. That is what I hear the most. And frankly, and you know what? You know why they all hate Andy Harris? Do you know why the watermen stood on the stood on the pier of Rock Hall to be profiled in the New York Times supporting a Democrat? The reason is because they think Andy Harris is corrupt, that he takes money from polluters and he doesn't do anything for them, and then he and then he blames them and he lets them get blamed. So the fact of the matter is, you know, dredging the Conowingo Dam clearly could be a federal appropriation because it's region, you know, the pollution is regional in nature, and it clearly needs to be done. One storm at the Conowingo Dam of the Susquehanna unleashes, you know, just an enormous amount of pollutants into the bay. I went down to a bay cleanup this spring, and there were mattresses and oil drums and all kinds of debris, and it all came from the Conowingo Dam. So yes, let's do that. This is a perfect use of infrastructure money that will have real world consequences that you can probably get support from both the environmentalists and the watermen and the farmers.
Okay, Ms. Mizeur.
The Conowingo Dam has been a challenge for years. Excess silt and sediment flows down the Susquehanna River from the Conowingo Dam, and it's particularly a challenge for our region because when the pollution is generated upstream in Pennsylvania, it's coming down and getting trapped in our reservoir at the dam. And then the heavy rain events causes the flow to come over the bay. And we recently found in a Maryland study that on average, 20% of the sediment that's entering the bay during these storm events comes from the Conowingo Dam. So it starts there, but it's impacting our tributaries throughout the bay. In my Economy First plan, there are 10 different sections of my Economy First plan, and one section is related to commercial fishing and aquaculture. And within that section, I go into some pretty big detail about how we can address the Conowingo plan. But in the brief time that I have here right now, it should be noted that there is a Conowingo watershed implementation plan at the federal level, but it just has not been implemented with urgency to address this pollution challenge. I want to encourage the Environmental Protection Agency and bipartisan members of the Congressional Chesapeake Bay Watershed Caucus. So there's a caucus of members that work among Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia, the Delmarva region, all the areas that are impacted by the Chesapeake Bay. There's a bipartisan caucus already engaging with legislators from those other states to build the coalition necessary to really make federal funding for implementing that Conowingo watershed implementation plan is a must. It's just sitting there, not being implemented and not being addressed with the urgency that it deserves. And I also think that we could further incentivize at the federal level, states putting more of their own matching funds into those Conowingo Watershed Implementation Plan goals. So in a nutshell, that's some of how I would approach addressing this problem. And for more details, if you go on the vision section of my website under Economy First, you'll find a lot more details that are related to other pieces of infrastructure at a hyper-local level to wastewater treatment plants and others that impact this.
Thank you. I hope that, you know, in answering this question, you took notice of the other two items that Donna raised that she didn't have time to ask about. So, you know, when either of you are elected, we hope that you will take those into consideration too. Okay, this is our last question of the evening. And this one is a strategy question. And Mike is going to give it to us. Ms. Mizeur will go with you first, and then Mr. Harden.
Well, first of all, thank you both again for being part of our forum tonight. And I assure you, we have a room full of people who are going to vote for either one of you in November. I have the last scripted question, and it's the big one. So how can you do it? Here's the full text. In 2020, Andy Harris won re-election by a difference of 27 percentage points. How will you motivate Democrats, independents, and even some disaffected Republicans to vote for you and overcome that numerical challenge? What vulnerabilities in Andy Harris's performance in DC will you address?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mike. It's always the critical question, and because in an election, this is the big thing. Though I must say that we have to make sure that we're putting campaigns together that are equally motivated to fire Andy Harris as well as to hire Heather Mizeur. And that's what I've been dedicated to doing from day one in this race, by building the unity coalition to win. I have not been running a campaign that is based on are you a Democrat, are you a Republican or an independent, and only trying to appeal to one group. Right now, our biggest national security threat is our polarization. What happened on January 6th is horrendous, and it happened on one day in one building, but it's not limited to that. It is a reflection of that kind of fighting and divisiveness that exists across communities. And people are ready to come together and heal again. They want to be listened to. They want to be respected. And my campaign has been about rising above partisanship and ideology in order to come together to solve problems again, and to have someone that would represent us with dignity and distinction, who will listen. I just was picking up chicken feed yesterday at the mill and had a woman who recognized me ask, I was asked if I could take her cart back into the mill for her. And she said, "Oh, you're Heather Mizeur." And I said, "I am. I hope I've earned your vote." And she said, "Well, let's talk." And she starts raising a bunch of different issues. And as we go through them, she shares with me in a very deep level a whole range of things, some that we agree with, some we disagree with. But Brenda said at the end of this conversation, which made her cry, "I haven't been listened to in a really long time." And she wasn't talking about Andy Harris here. She was talking about being able to talk with someone who she knew she was sharing some things that we wouldn't agree on, some things that were maybe even inflammatory and controversial. And I held it with respect and honor. And I was straight with her about where we disagreed. But I also pointed out a lot more areas where we agreed. And Brenda is not unlike Jerry and Alan and Tom and many others that I meet on a daily basis in this campaign that say, "I'm ready for something different. And I am excited about what you're bringing to the table." Now, what's it going to take to defeat Andy Harris? It's got to be a good message, but you've got to have resources. And I'm the only candidate in this race that has the resources to defeat Andy Harris. With the support of grassroots, we have raised almost $2 million in this race. We will be headed into the general election with over $1 million still in the bank. That is what it's going to take to highlight. Andy Harris has given us plenty of material to work with, but to know which one of the many things he's done that we want to focus on in order to get that message across to people, that takes focus groups, that takes investment, it takes ads, it takes direct mail and radio. All of that takes money. And we have put together a combination of the resources, the endorsements, and the strategy necessary to defeat him in November. Andy Harris has never gone up against someone who has as much experience as I have, who has run campaigns the way I have. And I think most importantly, he doesn't know what to do with someone who is having such phenomenal success at reaching across the aisle. We have endorsements from Republicans and Democrats in this race, something no other candidate in this race can compare with. I'm a campaign that we have put together, and I will have an opportunity to defeat Andy Harris in November.
Okay. I think, Mr. Harden, you get 2.5 minutes since Miss Mizeur took 2.5 minutes. So
Also-
Sean, you got that?
Yes, also Phyllis, a couple of questions back. Dave answered his question in less than 2 minutes, so he's also owed an extra 30 seconds for that.
Okay, so we're looking at 3 minutes, Sean?
About 3 minutes, yeah, that works.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, I'm gonna just take a moment on the filibuster. Look, I get the concerns about all this. You open up the filibuster, you don't know where it's going to end. There could be a national ban on abortions. There could be a massive right-wing resurgency that's going to codify everything under the sun because there's no checks. It doesn't necessarily break the way you want it to break. So I'd be very careful about that. I actually like the idea of a legislative right to privacy. Let's go to the numbers. Okay, I grew up here, I learned math. The last time a far left candidate, like you mentioned, Mike, ran, she lost by 27 points. Okay, the district is 5% easier now than what it was then. 7% of the people last time voted Joe Biden, Andy Harris. That means we've left 7% of the people on the table right there. It's a 14.4% district right now. You can't win with Democrats. You have to appeal to the right of center independents, and you have to get the Hogan Republicans. You have to get them. And there are disaffected Trump voters. For sure they are. How do I know that? They've given me money. They stood with me on the pier of Rock Hall with the New York Times. Do you know the bravery and the courage it takes for a waterman to stand shoulder to shoulder, or a seafood wholesaler, or an owner of a restaurant in Ocean City to stand shoulder to shoulder with a Democrat? They haven't supported a Democrat since 1988. So the numbers require not that you get support from all the political elites, not that you've raised $2 million, but that you have a message that will win, that will resonate in a district that's nearly impossible for a Democrat. We have lost and lost and lost. So if you think that in an environment where Democrats lose 90% of all rural counties in America, that you think the Democratic playbook as it currently stands is the path to victory, then you should vote for Heather. But if you think that there's a chance to really claw back the integrity and the decency and the economic understanding and grievances that the folks who voted for Trump, who hate Andy Harris, see a path as the future, then you could vote for me. We're going to need a brawler. We're going to need a fighter. We're going to need somebody who relishes taking the gloves off to go head to head with Andy Harris. I hope I earn your support. I hope I'm the nominee, because this is my community. This is where I grew up. This is who I'm fighting for. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We're going to move on now to summations. 2 minutes. Please. I'm sorry. Heidi?
Yeah, I don't think we have time because of the.
Hold on a minute, we're having a discussion here.
What summations are they? Oh, are they going to summarize again?
No.
They have not summarized.
Okay,
That was
they
the
need
last
summary.
question.
Go ahead.
Okay, we're going to go to summations. 2 minutes, please. Would you please stick to the 2 minutes? We're going to start with Ms. Mizeur, and then we're going to move to Mr. Harden.
I'm so sorry. I'm not sure I understand. Are you asking for like a closing statement?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Phyllis, again, thank you so much for moderating tonight. I apologize going over the last one. I was looking for Sean's red paper, but he wasn't on my screen anymore. So I did. Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to be here with you tonight. I got my start in politics on the picket lines with my father. He was a United Auto worker for 32 years, and we often were on strike for things like better wages and trying to hold on to our healthcare benefits for our family. And during those struggles, I learned some really important lessons from my dad that has been important to me my entire career in politics. He's always encouraged me to have the courage of my convictions, to have an opinion and be willing to voice it, and to always do what is right, not what is easy. And I hope if I've had the opportunity to earn your vote over the course of this election, where we've put together robust policies to address our economy, the healthcare environment in our communities, and the climate crisis. Whether you've had an opportunity to participate with our Mizeur Volunteer Corps, where we've partnered with nonprofit organizations and charitable groups throughout the district to do meaningful community service projects, because we don't have to wait to win an election to make a difference now. Or whether you've been a part of our 11 county tour, where we hit events in all 11 counties in about 48 hours, over 400 miles. We have been to every stretch of this district, putting the Unity Coalition together to defeat Andy Harris and win in November. I am excited to wake up every day working really hard for you, and I hope you give me the honor to do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Harden?
So I represented America in the toughest places on earth, the most dangerous places on earth, on the biggest issues of our generation. I didn't represent Republicans and I didn't represent Democrats. I represented America. January 6th was personal for me. I knew folks that I went to high school with that were down at the Capitol. I also had my son call me from Qatar. He's an Air Force officer. And he said, Dad, I'm supposed to keep my eyes on the Russians and the Chinese and the Iranians, and our allies and our friends are asking us what's happening in America because it looks like a civil war. I have stared down autocrats. I have stared down dictators. Our democracy, it's not self-executing. We don't get to keep it if we don't fight for it. All the issues that we've talked about tonight, which are important: immigration, education, agriculture. These are all very important things. We lose it. We lose it if we don't protect and defend our democracy, if we don't protect and defend the gift that our grandparents and our parents gave to us. If we don't hand it to our children, we will have failed. Andy Harris is part of the problem. He's undermining the very essence of our democratic well-being. He's giving rise to a nationalism that is dangerous and retrenching. I want to earn your support. I want to take the fight to Andy Harris. I want to protect our democracy. I don't want to be a career politician. I want to be a protector of America. I hope I can earn your vote. If you haven't already voted, do so. And if you can, do it before July 19th. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much to both of you for being here with us. Now Heidi's going to sum up from our end.
All right, yes, can't thank you enough for taking the time to do this. And for those of you who came, the next thing that I have to say takes about 3 minutes, but I know that Dave Harden and Heather Mizeur are pretty busy people. You are not obligated to stay for this. And if you don't, just know it is a impassioned speech to get people to help whichever one of you wins, beat Andy Harris. All right, so thank you so much for joining us. And then after that, we're gonna have William Malish speak. So, all right. I got it right, and then I got it wrong. All right, so yes, let's all agree. All right, no one wants to hear that this is the most important election of our lifetimes, because we've heard that one before. The last election was terrifying because we almost lost our democracy altogether. We almost had an authoritarian ruler instead of a president. Just let me say this is an extremely important election. We need to both restore and improve our democracy one vote at a time. We currently have a congressman who is no more interested in representing us and improving the lives of those in District 1 than he is in banning assault weapons and that annually kill hundreds of US residents. He voted against certifying the electoral votes in 2020 election, thus severely undermining our democracy. After the insurrection attempt, he voted against awarding the Congressional Medal of Honor to the Capitol Police. He has repeatedly voted against improving broadband, against protecting the environment, against the Affordable Care Act, and the list goes on. We have an authoritarian county executive who received a majority of her campaign funds from none other than Congressman Harris. She has abused power in every possible way. She immediately, upon coming to power, wiped out the entire Ethics Commission with one stroke and put in her own cronies. She is anti-public education and anti-public libraries. Her minions are running for offices in this election so she can do even more damage to all Cecil County public services, all the while making her own people richer and more powerful. We need democratic voter turnout like no one has seen before, or not in a long time. We need to make big headlines by flipping the first and saying no to all the Hornberger minions. This used to be a Democratic region. We need to make it that again. It will take all of you and all of your Democratic friends and your independent friends and all of their friends and their independent friends, light a fire under Democrats and like-minded independents. It is not impossible for us to win. We just have to be willing to put out the effort. This is no time for apathy. We need all like-minded people to vote in the primaries and of course, again, in the general election. To be clear, just voting is not enough. We need people to pound the pavement, knock on doors, make phone calls, write letters to the editor. Too many people simply don't know what their elected leaders are doing that negatively impact their lives. If they knew how supposed tax reform, Supreme Court rulings, and gerrymandering have given way more power to the big corporations and the super rich, they would rise up and demand real change. I believe people will get involved if we can educate them about what is really happening. The problem is we don't inform others well enough. We need to talk about the abuses of power here in the county by our CE and beyond by our congressman. It takes a lot of people to do this. Figure out what part of this you can do. And please, please, do it. Don't look to the other person next to you. You do it. More on specifics of what you can do later in the meeting, but at the end of this meeting, if you are not sure what your role is, if you still need direction, please reach out to someone on the board or to me. All right? Thank you. We're going to do this.